Hello and welcome to a new episode of Reptile TV, my intro animal. I always think my intro animals are especially beautiful, but this one is once again particularly beautiful. I have to say, up until now, I've never actually owned one. This is more or less the first time that I really have one like this in my hand and can show it. New Zealand green gecko, I think that's what it's called in German. Nautilus air gray in this case, Nautinus gray, but the name Nautinus, you almost bite your tongue trying to say it, because I find the L so odd. So Nautinus, you know, everyone knows the Nautilus, but Nautinus, the L, just feels like it's in the wrong place, at least linguistically. Yeah, so my intro animal for you today is right here. This is actually a juvenile animal, as you can see. As I mentioned before, I am the proud owner of a pair of these animals. There are really only a very small number of captive bred specimens available, and of course only a few of those are actually legal captive bred ones as well. Where the original parent or grandparent animals were in fact actually legally exported from New Zealand. It is truly an absolutely beautiful terrarium animal. I hope that in the coming years more of them will make their way into terrarium keeping. As far as keeping them goes, they're actually not that difficult. They need plenty of fresh air, they need great hiding spots, but then they're really a wonderful, rewarding terrarium animal. In terms of size, as I said, so yeah, more or less adolescent. So with the tail, it's about as long as my hand, but in terms of weight, it's actually 3 or 4 times as heavy. Absolutely gorgeous, and that's exactly why it's my intro animal for you today. Our topic today is what is currently increasing in value. What should I breed, right? Or market trends for 2025. Now, you could take a critical view and say something like, oh, it's not about the money, and why is it always about value and all that and so on. I definitely agree with you on that to some extent. You can narrow it down a bit, or let's say, maybe some of you know what I mean. You breed some kind of reptiles and gradually get the impression that, hey, nobody really wants them anymore, whether it's ball pythons, leopard geckos, or corn snakes. That's definitely something that some breeders are experiencing. He has loads of babies and gets the feeling that nobody wants them anymore. He just can't get rid of them no matter what price. There's simply no demand anymore. I'd like to talk about that a bit now and maybe just take a moment to actually share my impression with you, or perhaps give you my own sense of where I really think things might be heading. As I just mentioned a moment ago, we have some animals in herpetoculture that really do breed incredibly well. And it's a great thing because with all this breeding, I'll use the ball python as an example here. Thanks to all this breeding, there are hardly any imports anymore. There are no wild-caught imports at all anymore. Fortunately, those have been gone for a long time. Even the ranching imports have dropped dramatically. Well, you could also say poor Africans, they made a living from ranching and now it's getting harder and harder for them. But in general, because of the large number of terrarium animals being bred, wild-caught specimens have completely disappeared from the scene. I remember when I started out, I still remember we also supplied a lot of pet stores back then. There were customers who said, yeah, we need the red-throated animal, or we need those cheap imported wild-caught animals because we have to offer affordable animals for the customers. So all of that has been gone for a long time now, you know. I would say that in herpetoculture, from beginners starting small to professionals, everyone, or not everyone, but about 98% relies on captive bred animals, you know, and that's really a success story, and that's how it should be, and that's great. What is bred in large quantities or in huge numbers, massive sounds a bit negative, are corn snakes and leopard geckos, and right now crested geckos. You know, the crested geckos have been the latest trend for the past 1 or 2 years. Hundreds of thousands have been bred every year, really hundreds of thousands. That's great. As a result, it becomes a terrarium animal that is affordable and available for everyone. But in part, of course, it's also tough for those who breed them and say, yeah, I can't get rid of them anymore. Boa constrictors probably fall into that category too. And the ball python, which I just mentioned, is also one of them. Even regardless of what colors they have, there are really so many of them that people sometimes feel like, yeah, nobody wants to take them off our hands anymore. I think the trend is shifting back a bit to the kind of terrarium keeping we had when I first started. Back then, people really kept and bred all sorts of different species. Back then, it was probably because there weren't such large numbers available of each individual species that you could get, but there were several species, or as I said, at that time, quite a few still came in as wild-caught animals. Back then, there were more different species that you would see in terrarium keeping, and I think the trend is now shifting back a bit toward species that have been forgotten for years, because everyone was busy breeding ball pythons or breeding leopard geckos or breeding some kind of corn snake morphs. And now it's simply the case that if someone breeds an animal that has been almost absent from terrarium keeping for years or even decades, on the one hand, they have no problem finding new homes for their juveniles, and on the other hand, they might even get a price for them that 20 years ago, when everyone said, oh, I'm not interested in that, I want a ball python or something, they never would have gotten, you know. To give you some specific examples, I would say many Australian species, Australia itself is in fact close to exports. So what's available in the terrarium hobby is essentially just what's used for breeding, and the numbers aren't particularly large or significant. And if someone breeds something in that area, there's actually pretty good demand. People will come along and say, oh, that's a great gecko, or that's a great monitor lizard. Or even with snakes, carpet pythons, diamond pythons, where demand is still really strong. In the area of colubrids, lately a few colubrids have started to appear. What comes to mind right now is the Goniosoma margaritus. It's called the rainbow snake or something like that. Rainbow snake is probably the common name. That's a colubrid. And those colors are just incredible. And if someone breeds something like that, well, I think right now you only occasionally see some wild-caught specimens. I think hardly anyone has captive bred ones. So if someone breeds something like that, they definitely wouldn't have any trouble selling them. A good example among colubrids would be the indigos. For the past few years, I'd say the trend has really only been going upward, even for something like a coppery black indigo. I remember 20 years ago, you might have been able to get a male like that for 300 or 400 euros, maybe. And even then it was hard to sell. And now a copper one like that costs a few thousand euros, depending, sometimes even more for a male or especially for a female. So the demand is just so high, and the fascination with them. And on top of that, these are, of course, species that are not particularly easy to breed. If indigos were that easy to breed, then that wouldn't be the case anymore, of course. Then large quantities would be bred, and accordingly demand and prices would go down. But these are also species that are not that easy to breed, and that's why they have such high demand and also a stable price, you know. It's somewhat similar with lizards. With lizards, Crusia zebrata, the prehensile-tailed skinks, for example, come to mind. They can be bred, but they only produce 1 or 2 offspring. And even that, as I said, is not so easy. I actually think it's just one. I'm not even sure right now. With Crusia zebrata, is it always just 1 or 2? You can post it in the comments below if you're experts on this. These are animals that a few years ago cost a few hundred, but now they already cost several thousand euros. So the trend is definitely going upwards, and the demand is truly enormous. What also comes to mind, you know, is Geckonia scharzellii, that helmet-headed gecko way back. I think they were even imported actually from Africa, if I remember correctly. I hope I'm right about Africa. I think so. Helmet-headed gecko, Geckonia chazeli, and back then they were relatively cheap. Now, if someone has them, they may not cost thousands of euros, but at least a few hundred euros, you know. A really beautiful, amazing gecko. Definitely something you can breed and sell really well. The spiny tail, the gamma, you know, all the Euromastic species have been in herpetoculture for ages, but they're not something that reproduces like crazy, like bearded dragons do. It's a bit more difficult, even though they can be bred successfully. But it's a great terrarium animal. There's high demand, and in line with that demand, the price has actually gone up rather than down in recent years. Then green species, green always works. Corallus caninus and Corallus bartesi, also called emerald tree boas or dog-headed boas. Green tree python, Morelia viridis, that's something that's been bred for a long time or even forever, but still the prices are rising because the demand is still there or is actually getting bigger rather than smaller, right? In the colubrid area, we're back to Goniosoma again, right? Goniosoma oxycephala, for example, or the so-called green bush snakes. The color green is, anyway, I would say that both green and black are for terrarium keepers, the colors that are generally considered to be the most popular choices. And it's the same in the colubrid area. If you breed something like that, any kind of green snakes or, for example, long-nosed snakes, things like that, you'll never have a problem finding someone to take them off your hands. Last example, to stay with the colubrids, Elaph carinata. Colloquially, they're called sting snakes. The German name doesn't exactly make you want to say, yes, that's a terrarium animal that everyone needs, but recently they've really had a revival. Interestingly, that's also because they're very variable when it comes to colors or even color mutations. That's also something that always tempts us terrarium keepers a bit when I say, look, there's an albino or this, that, or some other color, where people then try to go in a certain direction with the colors. So I think that's also why they've experienced quite a good revival and are really popular now, whereas a few years ago, well, they didn't even cost 100 euros, nobody wanted them. I've talked your ear off again, but those are my thoughts. We always try to show you suitable photos as well, so you can have a better idea of what the animals look like. From my point of view, that's what's currently trendy. And in response to the question, so Stefan, what is still worth breeding? As I said, the term worth it, just put that in parentheses, or please don't get too hung up on that when it comes to worth it. Those are my thoughts on the matter. I'm looking forward to your feedback. What did I forget? Post it down below if you think, oh, this or that is in high demand, or regarding what I said, if you think, no, there's plenty of that, nobody wants it. Although I don't really believe that's the case for anything. Post it down below. I'm looking forward to your comments. Give a big thumbs up. Make sure to subscribe to the channel, and you'll always know exactly what's trending. And otherwise, please stay true to me and really take the time to check out the terrarium animals on a large, broad scale, and not just the balls here, right? For once, really take a good look at everything, explore all the fascinating details,